Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, social marketers from around the world. My name is Patrick Cook, and as president of the International Social Marketing Association, it's my privilege and my pleasure to introduce the 40th in a series of webinars designed to advance social marketing teaching, research, and practice. I'm here today with Christine Jennings, Catherine Sadler, and Dulce Espelosin. Christine and Catherine have worked to arrange today's webinar and will manage the questions that you may have for Dulce at the end. Dulce is, of course, our featured guest speaker today. But before we get started, I just wanted to make you aware of a few things that are happening with the International Social Marketing Association. For those of you who know us and are members, we are holding our annual general meeting in the coming weeks. We haven't finalized the date, but it will be in the next 6 to 8 weeks, and it's an opportunity for all members to hear how the board has been managing the association and our activities over the past year. So please look out for an announcement on that. If you haven't seen it already, and I'm sure you have, please do visit our new website at isocialmarketing.org. We're very proud of it and are really happy to have gotten it launched. And also, many of you participate in events, both virtual and in-person events, but of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has really changed what it is we're doing. And there were several conferences and meetings planned in 2020 and 2021. Just wanted to let you know that the ISMA is leading an effort to coordinate all the social marketing associations and behavior change groups to ensure that we are putting together an offering of those conferences and meetings at a time where they're not going to conflict with each other. So we will be providing a calendar for social marketing professionals to determine which meetings are when. So again, look for that coming up on the website. Finally, in terms of announcements, we are an all-volunteer board, and each year we have elections for new board members. We are looking for 4 new board members for our 20-person board. So we would love for you to consider nominating yourself or a friend or colleague. Our executive team, in addition to myself, is Diogo and Jennifer and Karis, and we are looking for a couple of new executive positions. So please consider that. An announcement will be coming out shortly. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christine, our webinar manager.
Thanks, Patrick. For some of you joining today, this might be your first ISMA webinar. Welcome. We have bi-monthly webinars featuring speakers and issues from around the world, and we offer these webinars jointly with our regional associations. For instance, today's webinar is jointly sponsored with the Social Marketing Association of North America. If you are an ISMA member, you'll learn about these via your member email. For non-members, we encourage you to join the association. You'll also become a member of your regional association with that membership. And you can also stay informed on social marketing resources by following us on social media, either on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook. And before we start today's webinar, I encourage those of you who did not participate in last month's webinar to visit the ISMA website to check out our Ask the Experts on COVID-19. These social marketers featured here provided really a great amount of tips and resources for practitioners. It was a really interesting discussion that's relevant to so much of the work as we're navigating the pandemic, whether you are working on COVID-19 specific issues or healthcare issues, or we even talked about implications for environmental and other non-health issues and how that affects our work throughout the stages of the pandemic. So be sure to check that out on the website. For today's webinar, we will first hear a presentation from our speaker, Dulce. Then we'll invite you to submit questions using the Q&A box. And for those of you who are not familiar with Zoom, here's an image and you'll see that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to go ahead and submit questions as they come to you. You don't need to wait until the end of her talk. We have plenty of time saved at the end of the webinar to answer your questions. So go ahead and submit those as you have them. So next, I'd like to turn the webinar over to today's moderator, Catherine Sadler. And Catherine, take it away. You may be on mute, Catherine.
I was on mute. Thanks, Christine. I'm happy to introduce Dulce Espelosin. She is our feature presenter for today's webinar. Dulce leads Spanish language trainings at RARE, Center for the Behavior and the Environment. She supports and guides different organizations in Latin America and the Caribbean to build strong behavior change strategies. Dulce is a social marketing expert and currently serves as Mexico's director for the Social Marketing Association of North America Board of Directors. Graduating with a science degree in communications and media from the Tecnológico de Monterrey, Dulce started to develop a great passion for working with communities in her native Mexico. Dulce has worked in more than 15 different countries with 50 rural communities since she began working for RARE in 2008. You might find Dulce at her kids' school trying to talk parents into refusing plastic and unicell utensils because behavior change must begin somewhere. Don't forget to put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And we are very fortunate to have Dulce sharing her experiences and insights with us in our webinar today. So with that, let's get started. Dulce, over to you.
Thank you, Catherine. And thank you, Christine and Patrick, for inviting me. Hi, everyone. Well, it is my pleasure to be here with you today. And before starting, I want to thank, of course, ISMA and SMANA for the invitation to host this webinar. As Catherine said, my name is Dulce Espelosin, and I am the Mexico Board Director of SMANA, and I work at RARE as the Senior Trainer for the Center for Behavior and the Environment, when we are trying to translate science into practice and leverage the best behavioral insights and design thinking approaches to tackle some of the most challenging environmental issues. At RARE, we believe in the power of inspiring people. We also are firm believers that behavior change is not so complex that it requires a PhD to understand. Every person is an expert on something, and we all share a common knowledge, the one of being humans. I've been using social marketing as a tool for behavior change for over 12 years, mainly to reach out different target audiences, some of those in very remote places or hard to reach communities, like this one in Peru. This is a small, super pretty town called Tanta. But to get in here, you need to travel from Lima to Jauja by plane. And then you need to traverse by car, a wonderful protected area that has 4,200 meters above sea level. And after 6-hour driving, you'll get there. When I've been at rural communities around the world training technicians in the use of social marketing to promote behavior change, they always give me the same feedback. After training, they feel equipped. They feel complete to go out to the field and to use social marketing to make the conservation problem a personal thing. I learned through the years in how by promoting correctly a behavior is really important. Providing knowledge and solutions invites people to take action. But I also know that behavior change is difficult, really, really difficult. So how do I reach out to those remote places and with what purpose in mind? Today, I'm going to share more about it, and I will make sure to have time for question and answers at the end of the webinar. So let me start by sharing of why we reach out to these remote communities. At RARE, we believe that conservation is about people, their attitudes and behaviors. Our behavior threatens the biodiversity that surrounds us. And it's very common that the very hard to reach places are the highest biodiversity sites, but also the most threatened ones. That is why we reach out in the first place the rural communities. And we do it with the aim to find the best solution and strategy to promote a new behavior, a more sustainable behavior, and sometimes that means an economic alternative. For example, a fishers community that has overfishing. We need them to decrease overfishing, but it isn't that simple to say or to ask. That is their main economical income. So we need to find a real solution first, a real alternative that can be translated into the same or better income. So before going into this community, we need to make sure we have the new alternative, meaning the new behavior. And in this case, is that fishers get trained to become tourist guides. For that, we need to train them and certificate them. So we use the power of social marketing to promote the attendance to the training. We promote through the right channels for our target audience why it is important to reduce overfishing, and of course, why it is beneficial for them to change their behavior and adopt a new one. Social marketing has the right tools to inform, communicate, and transmit the message. So we partner with local organizations and they invite local technicians to learn about behavior change and social marketing. And together we build the behavior change strategy. And then is when we are ready to launch a campaign, a social marketing campaign. We train local leaders in the use of the most sophisticated quantitative and qualitative research methods in order to gather a great and deep understanding of how their target audience feels about the situation. With all that information, we provide to our participants into the application of different theories of behavior change, like Prochaska, trans-theoretical model of behavior change, or Rogers with the diffusion of innovation. These are among the most well-known approaches that provide us with frameworks for human decision-making and have given us all the necessary inputs to then transform into social marketing strategies. When I am out in these very remote communities, this is the most important thing I try to start with, by understanding who is behind the threat. Brare's approach to behavior change has evolved from observing that conservation practitioners have struggled to influence behaviors through solely the use of traditional techniques, such as rules and regulations, monetary incentives, and information-based campaigns. Our field has been slower to adopt new techniques like social marketing and behavioral insights, such as how appealing to the emotions and or providing social incentives and or designing for choice architecture. These all can really influence behaviors. 10 years ago, a few psychologists wanted to see how much influence emotions like pride and shame have on a person's self-control. So these guys found some willing participants and set them in 3 groups and put them in 3 different rooms. And they give them everybody a piece of chocolate cake. They left the first group alone and told them they'd be back in a little while. That was the only instruction for group 1. With second group, before leaving them, they told them to imagine the shame they could feel if they ate the cake, all of those calories. With the third group, they first told them to imagine all the pride they could feel if they resisted eating the cake, how happy with themselves they could be, and then they left them to make their choice. They wanted to know if there could be a difference in how much cake each group will then eat. What do you think? Which group was more successful in not eating the cake? The shame group, the pride group, or the one that has to make their own choice? The experiment showed that pride was the strongest motivator. What's even more interesting is that using shame was not only useless as a motivator, but impacted choice negatively. Because the group that was told nothing was actually more successful in resisting the cake than the ones that were not shamed. Look at this, 40% of the people that felt pride resisted to eat the cake. And this is how we use social marketing to provide pride and emotions to the people that we work with. So today I want to share with all of you how I use social marketing as a behavior-centered design tool in some hard-reached places. This is Mount Namuli, called the Lost Mountain. It combines discovery, adventure, and ultimately survival in one of the world's least explored and most threatened habitats. Mount Namuli, the largest of a group of isolated peaks that tower over the ancient valleys of northern Mozambique. Here, plants and animals have evolved so that individual mountains have become refuge to their own unique species of life, many of which have yet to be discovered or described by science. This mountain is part of the work that local organization Legado does. So Legado reached out to Rare, and together we created a behavior change strategy for Mount Namuli and its biggest conservation problem, slash and burn. That it was leading to the lack of land and therefore the lack of water for the community. When Legado reached out to us, they say, we have this problem with water and we don't know exactly how to tackle with without the community support. So we create this idea of training their local staff in how to promote and create a new behavior in Namuli around agricultural slash and burn practices. So we train over 20 local technicians into the use of social marketing and behavior change as a way to promote the reduction of this practice with a very specific target audience in mind, the Namulis. Normal practice for Namulis was to burn the land for about 2 cycles each year and repeat, doing this for around 3 or 4 times a year in order to clean the land and cultivate tomato or sugarcane. Since in Mount Namuli they have a communal land, they can easily move to a new piece of land every time they need. The problem now, after years of practicing slash and burn, is the mountain is practically dry. All layers of soil and subsoil have been drying, and to capture water at this point is practically impossible. So this community has water in an average of 2 or 3 days a week, and some of those days only for about 5 or 6 hours. So you must be wondering, what was the new behavior, the solution, or the new alternative for Namulis? So we started with the planification of this training about 3 months before arriving to Namuli. I had to make sure I was able to understand the overall context of actual behavior. So I used conceptual models to understand their ecosystem, their threats, and even the potential solutions for the course. And I made all of that with a very hairy involvement of Legado, the local organization. We drafted a profile of the target audience and we designated a local coordinator. He started by establishing a relationship with the local leader of the Namuli village in order to have the green light of doing field work with them in the upcoming months. That was the very first step, and I will say a critical step when working in rural communities. So here we are. This is how I begin my journey at Mount Namuli. Through Rare C4C campaigning for conservation training of 10 days, I receive in a local lodging on day 1 technicians from all over Mozambique. On day 1 of training, participants got to know each other better and then dove immediately into learning the fundamentals of social marketing and its basic concepts, such as diffusion of innovation and the stages of behavior change. On day 2, participants learned all about conceptual model, factor change, theory of change, and work on the analysis and understanding and implementation of qualitative and quantitative research techniques. Day 3 began with the participants' official visit to the local community of Namuli to carry our activities and begin research. We used both quantitative and qualitative techniques, and participants had the chance to start interacting with a sample of our target audience, the young farmers of Namuli who burn forests with a slash and burn. Participants, after a long day of fieldwork, returned to the workshop venue to begin transcribing the information collected. Day 4 focused on participants gaining a deep understanding of their target audience and learning how to create a marketing mix in order to start making informed decisions for the creation of their campaign materials and activities. They develop message and they choose messengers for our social marketing campaign to motivate the target audience towards the desired behavior change. After all the research and mapping of context and circumstances, we were able to decide on best behavior change to promote with local inhabitants of Namuli. The willingness of farmers to participate in community vision working groups that will form management committees to preserve Mount Namuli ecosystem. In day 5, participants began to vote for the best slogan and call to action, and they started to put together everything they learned into practice. I divided the group into teams to start creating their materials. These with aims of them to come back home and being able to produce low-cost outreach materials. We hire local experts on each of the topics to support participants. So one group was working with a painter focused on the design and drawings for the mural. Group 2 had to get creative and translate the message into the lyrics of a song. And with some local musicians, they created the right rhythm for the target audience, the Namulis. And a third group was working with a local priest, and they had to read, choose, and use verses and chapters of the Bible to create a church sermon that aligned with the campaign message. Team 4, with local school teacher, chose puppet characters and wrote a puppet screenplay for the children of the local school. At the end of day 5, members of our target audience attended the workshop to validate the materials, the message, images, and calls to action. On day 6, the puppet team of C4Cs worked with local school to start coaching 6 children in the reading of puppet show script, and they begin rehearsing, not without first validating the kids' understanding of the story through a focus group with the kids and their teacher. Day 7 was a lot of fun for participants because they worked with the painter artist to finish the mural, and then they worked to ensure that all the necessary elements were there. Other participants focus on the work with the 2 seamstress and tailor that will create and give life to the puppets. Some of the spokesmen of the social marketing campaign with the following slogan and call to action. This is Lombwe, the language that Namuli speak. So in English, this is a translation. I am Namuli, mother of the Lombwe people. And the call to action, we read it like, do not expect to hear from others, participants in the meetings to contribute with your knowledge, ideas, and methods of conserving land, forest, and water. So a slogan and call to action were in all of the materials that we were working for the community. On day 8, we finalized 6 social marketing materials for the campaign with logos and call to action. Mural, discussion board, song, poster, church sermon, and the puppet theater and a script. You can see in here how participants were working on it with the idea that they learn all of the techniques and then they can replicate that in their sites. At the last night, we closed the Mount Namuli training with a very special dinner for all participants. Now they are certified by C4C to return with confidence at their sites of having the knowledge and tools acquired to plan and implement their own social marketing campaigns. They all received their emblematic C4C pin and were very, very happy. But the last day, the show day, the final day was day 10. So participants presented for over 80 people at the final event. They present the puppet show with Namuli children, where they were the main stars. And participants also performed the campaign song. And between applauses and a lot of emotion, the message of the campaign was transmitted to everyone present, teachers, students, parents, and of course, farmers, our target audience. Right after the puppet show, all participants and community members were able to attend to the unveiling of the mural that was installed in a very strategic location where the target audience can see it every day. Participants celebrated together the great achievement and took a very special memory photo with all of the people from Namuli. The participants who entered as individuals are now part of a larger group of friends and co-workers for the region around Mount Namuli and their nation. So this is how Rare and I work with social marketing and behavior change techniques in hard to reach places. And I want to say that it's difficult, challenging, and tough sometimes. But most of all, it's super rewarding, and knowing I am contributing somehow to communities, culture, and well-being, it's a great satisfaction. So I want to show you a video of the last day and the last show after the puppet show presentation, when the participants were singing the song and kind of singing with the kids. And it was impressive because they presented only one time and kids were almost singing the song, but you can judge for yourself. Here. this is a little taste of what I lived that day, and it was amazing. And I hope all of you have the opportunity to go to these places and know all of these amazing people. And that is why I always like to say that social marketing is for social good and feels very good. Thank you so much for your attention. And now I will open my video for questions and answers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dulce. What a great presentation. Please, if you have questions for Dulce, feel free to put them in the Q&A box. And in the meantime, I'm going to start with some of the questions that we already have. Can you talk a little bit about your monitoring and evaluation of your campaign? How long until you see the results?
Sure. Hi, Kelly. And sorry, I'm not sharing my screen because I have my video on, but somehow, because I combined the screens, it's not showing, but you can hear me well, and that's enough, I guess. So yes, the way that we monitor and evaluate the campaigns is through a tool that we call Theory of Change. And if you look Theory of Change in Google, for example, you will see that a lot of organizations use this tool as a way to kind of follow the steps that every behavior change has to have. So for example, in knowledge, what the people need to know, and then what is the right attitude so people can start validating the new ideas. And then, for example, what is the behavior change we're trying to have, and what is the threat reduction that we will achieve if people change the behavior. And at the end, for example, at RARE, we adapted the theory of change and we add what it's called conservation result. And that is kind of the last goal that we have every time that we do field work. And normally that goes in the long term. So if we start thinking in behavior change, let's say in 2020, the idea is that we will have at least 2 or 3 years until we start decreasing or reducing the threat. And then that will lead into 2 or 3 more years to have a conservation result. So that is what we use. And of course, we have baselines that we achieve through the pre-research that we do every time that we start working in the field. And then we monitor that after the implementation. So that can be 2 or 3 years after the first day that we start the campaign. And it's when we have results, and that will give us the percentage of change that we achieve in every of the steps of the theory of change.
So when do you intend to have your first evaluation or process evaluation started?
Yes, for Namuli, right?
Right.
Yeah, so for Namuli, we started this campaign in 2017. And so right now we are in the implementation phase. But as you know, because of COVID, we have been stopping some of the activities that require a lot of people to be together, such as the puppet theater presentations. And so we are kind of hold right now, but we have our first goal to 2021. And the idea is that we can have some, for example, threat reduction by the end of 2021. And that will aim into having, for example, a conservation result, we hope by 2025. So that will be for Mount Namuli, and that's how normally we work in the communities with, I will say, 2 or 3 year implementation. So we can have a good response of people and people changing. Yeah, sorry.
That's wonderful. So how did you connect in the first place with the local partners and organizations?
Yeah, we first work with local organizations, and it's very often that they reach out to RARE because they know our methodology, or people that we have been working with they recommend to us. And so when they reach out to us, we make sure to start understanding the local target audience, and we do it with the help and support of a a local coordinator that it's from the site. And this person is in charge of starting to, get close to the local leaders and start asking permission to have some field implementation with them. And we are very transparent about the dates that we are planning to have a group of people there, and then what is going to be the period of implementation that we are intended to do after the training, etc. So that's how we approach the people, the local people.
So getting the right people on board to start. And so was that part of the methods, and what other methods did you use to assemble local perspectives that might contribute to behavior, like religious values, or having you as an outsider coming into the community?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So for example, every time that we're gonna work in a community, we always, as I said, we partner with a local organization, and they have a pretty good understanding of the target audience before we arrive to the place. But in the planning months, we start working to understand their values, their religion, and everything that is related to their culture. So we wait, and for example, if the community is very religious, what is the religion they practice the most? What is the local priest that our target audience go every Sunday or every day of church? And then with the support of, for example, of this priest, we try to build this sermon church, and we try to make him a messenger, so an ally of the campaign. And so, because, religion is a very strong communication channel, and of course we need to be super cautious when working with it. Before everything, we make sure that we know 100% sure the religion of the target audience, church, priest, and yeah, that's it.
That's great. How do you deal with the poor quality of the internet connections? How does that affect the interactivity for remote engagement?
Yeah, we try to make all of the outreach materials accessible for everybody. So that is why we choose, for example, to work with murals, song, puppet shows, discussion boards. And the idea is that we need to adjust to the community and their normal practices, and not them to us. So when we do research, we always include a media section where we ask what is the most popular radio station in the community. We ask if they use, for example, WhatsApp or Facebook. But in remote communities, people need to pay for cell phone data. So if we want to base our communication with them via cell phone, it is going to be very expensive for them, and probably we will lose a lot of investment and time. So we need to make sure first what is the social media they use, if they use it, and if not, I will say it's better to have free of internet materials like murals on, etc.
Okay, was it hard to establish relationships with the remote local leaders, such as, did you find any problems with institutional bias, racism?
Well, yeah, when we were trying to, for example, in Amuli, when we first arrived to the site, they were kind of tired of receiving international organizations. They were kind of skeptic of everything that we were saying. So what we are trying to build right now is a trusted relationship with them, and everything that we promise, something that we're gonna do, we try to keep it, because it is super hard to build that relationship, but it's super easy to break it in 2 seconds. So that is how we manage to work with the local leaders, with a lot of transparency, and just make sure that everything we promise will be for sure happening.
So you use positive reinforcement for your messaging, and you gave what type of alternate activity did you provide? Did you ask the farmers to do rather than burning their fields?
Yeah, we are promoting right now an alternative that they chose, and they were the ones that decided they wanted to practice that. And so instead of slash and burn, they are using something that it's called slash and chop. And so they are using all of whatever they used to burn as a way to have a natural fertilizers, and kind of using that in an agroecological way to make to the land with, you know, better humidity, and with better nutrients, and kind of work towards agroecological practices.
Yeah, great. So what do you see, or what outcomes do you see as far as long-term sustainability?
Well, we hope that the mountains start having, you know, again, I will say plants and trees, because right now it's super dry and the subsoil is super dry as well. So the problem, as I was saying in the webinar, is that they are having a great lack of water, which is a huge problem. And so hopefully by the end of 2021, they can decrease the slash and burn in a big percentage. And by doing that, the mountain will be renewing life, hopefully. And by 2025, hopefully we will have, well, they will have more water. And instead of having water for 2 or 3 days a week, hopefully they will have more days a week and for more time. And they will learn all of these practices and passes to their children and their grandchildren, because they live there forever. And yeah, it is important that they want to preserve.
So do you think that this framework would work in the US? Are there parts that fit better than others?
Well, we have been testing at the Center of some of our methodology in some of the organizations, and they use a lot of what I showed at the beginning, which is the 6 levels of behavior change. And that is something that has been very useful for a lot of different organizations, including universities. So for example, they are using the choice architecture or the emotions appeals, for example, to change the way that the students from university chose food when they go into the buffets of the school. So we are kind of helping them to make a better architecture on how they put the options of meal, like the vegan meal, the vegetarian meals, and the normal meal. So everybody can choose what is, you know, more pretty or at the beginning, and kind of decide different when choosing their food. And that's something that has been working in the United States. And I will say that C4C, a lot of organizations of United States, but that work outside of United States, they really like this approach, because it's a very rural and remote communities work. So yeah, that's how we manage that.
So if you compare slash and chop to the slash and burn, slash and chop seems like it'd be a lot more work than slash and burn. What do farmers think about slash and chop?
Yeah, well, because remember that we were asking them to join the visioning groups and be part of the management committees. They were the ones to decide on this technique. And that is because some of them kind of know the practice, but they were kind of afraid of having to spend money in some new tools for the agricultural practices. And some others were just afraid of, you know, losing all of their cultivation of the year. So when they decided to use this technique, they were passing the voice to their friends and to their peers, and that was easier. And right now, people is feeling happy to gradually change the way that they were, you know, doing a slash and burn, and now they are using a slash and chop, even if it's more work, but they are seeing how the land is getting better, in better shape. And so they can see that for them and for their future generations, it's going to be very impactful to have better lands and more water.
So they owned the decision to use that instead of slash and burn.
Exactly. They were the ones that decided, and they are the ones that want to implement that technique. So that is why they are kind of adopting that, because what we have been learning in behavior change is when we arrive to the sites and we come with the solution, but they don't decide on that, is like they just don't care. So when we build with them, it's very different, and they are part of the decisions, and so they want to adopt the new behavior, and they are doing that because they want to.
That's perfect. So what's the best antidote you can tell us from your from this adventure?
From Namuli. Well, in Namuli, I had a lot of great anecdotes, but it's a very lovely town and great people. But I remember I was kind of trying to visit the local school. And so the local leader that you saw on the first picture, he is like, I don't know, maybe 55 years old. And I was younger, of course, at that moment. And so he said, okay, I walk you through the school. Do you want to walk? And I say, yes, because other people were going in by motorcycle. But I never kind of dimensioned the distance. And I thought it was nearby. So I started walking behind the leader, and he was walking and walking and walking and walking, like for 1 hour, non-stopping. And he was going these little valleys and mountains like nothing. And I was super tired. And I was like, oh my God, please, can we stop? And he was just keep walking like nothing. And then he turned around at some moment and said, like, are you tired? You want to go by motorcycle? But look at me like I was like nothing, you know? And I was just like, no, I can walk. But at the end of 2 hours, we arrived to the school, and I met all of these beautiful kids, and I enjoyed really a lot of this adventure, because when we were returning, walking again, he presented me to his wife and his kids, because his house was in the middle of the road. So it was an amazing opportunity for me to see how they live and how the family was there, and they were super proud of his dad, and it was just very nice.
Neat. Great story. I'm sure you have a lot of great stories.
Yeah.
Well, I am, that's the end of our questions for this evening. I'm
Great.
looking for who I send this back to. I think I send this back to Patrick.
It actually comes back to me.
Back to Christine. I am so sorry, Christine.
No problem. Really, that was wonderful. Thank you very much, Catherine and Dulce. It was a great information, and what a wonderful conversation. And thanks to all of the participants in today's webinar. Today's recorded webinar and slides will be available. You'll get an email in about a week that will give you the link to how you can access the recorded webinar if you'd like to view that again. It'll be available in the members section of the ISMA website. And before we wrap up today, we would love your feedback. So in just a moment, a poll is going to pop up on the screen. There it is. And we just have a couple of quick questions about the quality of today's webinar. We really value your feedback. It really helps us as we assess the kind of topics and discussions as we plan future webinars. So please take a moment and they're very quick questions, and give us your feedback as we get ready to wrap up. If you have any other feedback that you'd like to provide, you can certainly feel free to send an email to me about what you'd like to see as we're planning future webinars. We'd also like to invite those of you who joined today's free webinar to become a member of the International Social Marketing Association. When you join the ISMA, you also become a member of your regional association. You'll be part of a network of hundreds of social marketers. You'll have access to a broader set of professional development materials, discounts to conferences, and access to 40 of our recorded and archived webinars. Be sure to keep an eye on the ISMA website and social media for details on upcoming ISMA webinars later this summer and through the end of this year. I would like to take a moment and thank the ISMA's volunteer webinar team, including our moderator, Catherine, and behind the scenes for all of the work that goes into organizing these events and webinars. Thanks again, and Patrick, over to you for some final thoughts.
Great, thanks very much, Christine, and thank you, Catherine and Dulce, for an excellent and really inspiring webinar. Really appreciate the passion that you bring to it, Dulce. I also want to thank all of you who joined us this morning, this evening, or this afternoon. Without you, of course, these webinars don't happen. So we are pleased that you were able to join us. And I do want to, our friend who's not here this evening, but Dave is our webinar manager, and I'm filling in for him, and I'm a poor second to him. He often runs the back end of these webinars, and he always does an amazing job. So as Christine said, we've got lots of stuff on the website. We've got lots of events coming up. As I mentioned at the top of the webinar, we have our board elections coming up. We have some more information about the social marketing events that are coming up in 2020 or later this year in 2021 and 2022. So stay tuned. But for now, this is the International Social Marketing Association, and we now conclude today's webinar.